Thank you for being on time to the first panel during the Startup Spotlight competition, which is in partnership with Ixia. Yay, Ixia, awesome. Okay, so we have our esteemed panel members, and I'm going to introduce you guys, just to make it shorter a little bit. Okay, first of all, how many of you went through an accelerator? How many of you know what's an accelerator? Okay, that's better. Well, we're not going to discuss what is an accelerator, but we are going to discuss the best practices when going through an accelerator. Because it's definitely a very interesting experience. And myself, I haven't been through one, but I have a lot of friends who did. And the opinions are very split, between what's good, what's bad, which ones suck, which ones don't. And this is why we have these guys here, because they're representative of 4 different accelerators. Well, we'll explain that later. But yes, I'm going to introduce them. Dilyan Dimitrov, he's from Sofia. He's the founder of 11 Startup Accelerator and the VP of Bedminster Capital Management. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I should have started with the lady. Luise Gruner, she's the Senior Associate at Electronic Media Division Axel Springer in Berlin, Germany. Rune Theill, did I say it right? Yes. Has a very hard name to pronounce. He's the co-founder and program director at Rockstart Accelerator in Amsterdam. And David, he used to work for an accelerator called Hack Forward. I'm sure that a lot of you heard of it, and a few weeks ago, they decided to end it, which is a good feedback to get from someone who went through that as well, like an accelerator that actually didn't continue. Okay, so of course they are more involved in a lot of other startup-related things, and I should probably sit down. Okay, yay. And I am Anca. Hello. Okay. So, how many series graduated from your accelerators? Like, how many series of startups did you guys have in each accelerator? Does that make sense?
20. That's the short answer.
20 series?
No, so 20 startups in total.
Okay,
we have
how many
2
times?
batches. So we've been running for 2 years.
Okay.
And it's a 6-month program, 5 months in Amsterdam and 1 month in San Francisco.
Okay. And you had two series, so two
so
batches
far, yeah.
of teams coming.
Yeah, 2
okay.
sets of teams.
So we started in May this year, and 1 batch already graduated, and currently our 2nd batch is going on. So we're doing 2 batches a year, basically.
Okay.
So Hack Forward closed down officially in the beginning of September. We ran for 3 years. We did 16 investments, and although the program is actually finished, 13 of those 16 startups are still active. And we never graduated anyone because we didn't have seasons.
So I guess we are very intensive because we've been out there still since September last year, and we've done 4 batches and a half. We have a specialized batch in games. So we've done 46 companies in 4 cohorts.
Okay. So each accelerator functions on a different type of, lengths, and you have different programs. You focus on different startups. What do you think what types of benefits extend beyond graduating from an accelerator? So when you have a startup coming to your accelerator, what benefits do they get at the end of it?
Yeah, so I think the most obvious one is obviously with time and legacy, the brand is quite important. Next to that, being part of a network of not only the mentors, but also the alumni is something that you can use moving forward as a company. And obviously, for fundraising, at least the way we run it, is sort of continuous process, right? So you might have to fundraise for more than one time. And that's one of the main benefits.
So in our case, as Axel Springer Plug and Play is backed by Axel Springer, one of the biggest media companies and Plug and Play tech center in the Valley, it's definitely the network which stays. The network to Axel Springer Plug and Play, but also to the teams And after our program, the teams have still the opportunity to go to the Silicon Valley for more acceleration and to go there to the demo day.
Likewise, for us, really the network lives on, and I think it's been a huge contribution to the startups from day one, and also access to investment and further investment capital so that they can continue to be active.
Yeah, so what they said.
Not adding anything extra?
Well, the only other thing is, you know, when you're a small company, usually an investor has to do due diligence. So going through a kind of reputable accelerator waives that kind of need for, you know, detailed due diligence, so people just can go out and directly invest in you, more or less, right?
Actually, I was able to participate in some negotiations with our startups and venture capital firms, and it was really, really interesting to see the benefit of people who have gone through that process many, many times and how they add value to first-time entrepreneurs, because those meetings can be really tricky. And obviously the venture capitalists are experts at their game, and the first-time entrepreneurs are brand new to it. So having that kind of support through those types of meetings is really big value.
Okay, at what stage is recommended for a startup to apply for an accelerator?
So I think an accelerator is not just anymore an accelerator. This morning TechCrunch had a post about the amount of accelerators that's been coming out the last 3 years, and I think it was 170 that they noted to be an accelerator at the way they defined it in the world. And that's going down quite a bit currently. So I think what's happening is that everyone has to find their own sweet spot, right? There's, in different phases of a startup life, there might be an accelerator that works for, you know, ideation. There might be an accelerator that works for companies that's really early on post-revenue or pre-revenue. And in other cases, maybe like Hack Forward, I think it was more interesting for you guys with post-revenue, right? I'm not sure that's correct. So that's not correct. But I mean, just to paint the picture, we had a startup in the first batch that then went on to be in Techstars, and I think that's one way of doing it, right? I don't know what you guys think.
So I would say actually it's really important for the startup to be very, very selective. And hopefully you're a startup that's in a position to be very, very selective and choose the type of accelerator that was built to fit you. And now with 175 or more, there's bound to be one that can give you a lot more advantage over others. And so there's very, very, very early stage programs that accept people with just ideas on paper or no ideas at all. And then there's programs that look into later stage, but then there's also very focused programs in terms of vertical. So if you're designing games or if you're doing SaaS, there's different accelerators. So there can be a lot of advantage to that. But really, you have to write down on paper, what are the top 10 things that we want to get out of this, and who's going to provide that for us? And then go for that one or those few.
So in our accelerates, like I think the startups profit most of when they have already prototypes and launch during the program or shortly after, because we are a media company and we have huge access to media reach.
Yeah, just an observation. What we do in Europe, and particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, we do invest in earlier stage than anywhere else. So I would say, I mean, we'd prefer to invest in later stage company, but just the culture is such that we are ready to take more risks. And that's why we have, let's say, that's why we have a 6-month program rather than a 13-week program, because it takes a while to get into shape before you build it and then you launch it. So I would say it's different also. There are verticals, there are also different programs focusing on different kind of companies, but we are generally doing one step further, so earlier in Europe.
Okay, so there's a pattern, like the way that accelerators work is a lot of startups from everywhere, all over the world, or the region that you guys focus on, apply, right? So they have to look for you. And after that, they come to your location, they go through a program, they meet mentors, they meet, hopefully, investors. Yeah, after that, a lot of them, like how many of you take them or took them to Silicon Valley?
So that's what we do as part of the program.
Okay. If you are taking them to Silicon Valley to meet the community there. No. If you are traveling, if you're taking the startups and traveling to Silicon Valley.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Dilyan,
We generally take the ones where it makes sense to go there. I mean, there are startups which are better suited to be invested and followed up and developed in Europe. There are some that are contextually correct to stay in the States. So we are still a bit, because we've done so many, we've done 46 and we're doing more and more. You know, for some of them it makes sense, for some of them it's just a waste of time. So very selective.
and David, did you used to, like, did you facilitate?
We had no formal program to take them to Silicon Valley, but we facilitated a lot of visits and make sure that people would meet the right networks. And it might not be Silicon Valley. Some people we sent to New York, depending on the type of business that they were running.
Okay.
Just to make sure, Silicon Valley is not like a painkiller. You know, it doesn't solve all the problems of a startup. So just going there, people don't throw money at you. You know, it's not like that.
Thank you. Yeah, they don't.
So I think that's certainly not why the reason why we decided to take them there, because we do recognize that's not happening. It's probably more difficult to raise money in the Valley than it is here. 23,000 startups competing for the same funds in such a small area. But I think, you know, some of the best practices that you can learn from there, the way the company build out, the way they structure the fundraising as well, some of the new standards being convertible notes, I think having that mindset, transferring it back, and having the community for us in Amsterdam to grow out with entrepreneurs who understand the new standards. I think that's a good reason for us to do it, because we want to build out a community as well, right?
Okay, so I have a lot of, as I said before, you know, I'm connected with a lot of startups, with a huge network of startups, and a lot of them went through accelerators. And the opinions, this is just like a general discussion. I'm going to take it forward to the way that, like, I'm trying to figure out how does a startup figure out how to pick the right accelerator? Because it seems that, you know, in the last few years, like Rune said, there are, you know, over 170 accelerators. That's ridiculous. Like, to research all of them, it'll take a ridiculously amount of time. So how do startups pick the right accelerator? And also, that, there are a lot of people that jump on the accelerator bandwagon. You know, so there are a lot of like low-quality accelerators out there, and I've heard horror story. And for example, in August, David Cohen wrote an article, and it was called "A Horrifying Accelerator Story That You'll Need to Read Twice." And that caused a lot of controversy online. If you guys didn't read it, I recommend that you read it. It's very interesting, like, just to get like a different story, you know, about what can happen in an accelerator and how can people get demotivated instead of motivated, which is the main purpose, you know, to keep moving forward. So it takes, you know, from that article, what I learned is that it takes more than just bringing mentors and knowing, you know, having a network of investors and like bringing high quality people to an accelerator. You actually have to build a good program, and you have to provide a high quality experience to, you know, to startups. So how do they get to the point where it's easier for them to filter the number of accelerators and pick the right one for them?
Should I go? So I think they should do exactly what we do when we look at them. We look at the reason why they're doing it. Like, why do you want to build this company? What are you in it for? I think that's also some of the questions that you ask to us. So, like, why are you running this accelerator? And maybe look at where the resources come from. Because currently, with so many different accelerators, you have government EU-funded ones. You have corporate accelerators, which I think you represent. And then you have privately funded accelerators, which is Hack Forward and us. And I think we all have different reasons, and we have different sort of approach towards how we look at the business itself. Is that too radical?
Yeah, I mean, if a startup is looking for accelerator, I mean, what you said is right in the beginning. You should do your homework first of all, make a research. It doesn't make sense to go from Europe to India to accelerate, right? We see a lot of companies apply from South America. So why the hell would someone come from Peru to Sofia for acceleration? Because he didn't get any funding in Peru, right? We're like a last resort. So doing the homework, like what that particular accelerator does in terms of verticals, what specialization, what do they do, and how much does it fit with your startup? But I think that the easiest thing to do is to find some of the people that graduated and actually speak with them. And these people are available. You can find the startups, you can find the founders, and you can ping them, and they're going to be responsive. They're going to tell you, we had great experience, we sucked, these people are bad, or these people make sense. So my advice is find the founders that already graduated and speak with them.
What if it's a first-time experience? What if it's a first time that the accelerators are doing that thing?
Each accelerator has its early adopters, right? Each accelerator has its early adopters, the people that are very forgiving and they will say a good word even if you don't deserve it.
Yeah, but should it be that way? Or should the people that are going through an accelerator and have a bad experience actually talk about it and pinpoint like, this one sucks, don't go there?
People should talk about it. People should be very honest about this, because if a good company goes to a bad accelerator, it's a waste of talent. And there is not enough talent in the world, so people should cherish it. So my guess is people should be very straightforward and honest about, did it make sense, did it not, did it work well? And that's where it comes in. If you already went through an accelerator, if you're not happy, you have nothing to lose by actually being very honest if it wasn't good, right? So this is where people should be really, really open and very honest on their experience with accelerators.
And that is exactly actually what we are doing with applicants that are a bit unsure about the program. We are doing the introduction to a startup that graduated or are currently in the program, and that usually helps a lot for us and for the startups.
I think, again, it's really up to the startup to do a lot of homework, right? Because you could say, if you're a startup here, if you got an offer to join Y Combinator, would you do it? And I guess everybody would raise their hand and say yes. The thing is are you a fit for Y Combinator? Y Combinator is probably the #1 program on the planet in terms of getting you exposure to investors, right? Their demo day is super packed. Beyond that, they don't really have a structured program, as far as I know, and unless it's changed. But that access they give you, but you have to bust your ass to shine amongst whatever's in the pack that season. And are you ready for that? And I think what you might be seeing in some cases, and I noticed this in France a bit repeatedly, there's an accelerator program called the Camping, and to me, some of the companies seem to use it as a pre-accelerator program. And I've seen this happen several times now, where they go through the Camping and then they go to Techstars in the US. And the differences between the two are huge, because in the Camping, there's a lot of hand-holding. There's a lot of babysitting, if you will. In Techstars, from the feedback that I've heard, there's a massive amount of pressure, and that's something that I don't think we see a lot of or enough of in Europe. But that when the startup is ready to go to the next step, and they seek that out, because they know that this is what they need. And so again, you have to look, if you want media, if you want this, if you want that, you just have to do your homework.
But do you think that that's the right, excuse me, do you think that that's the right approach, like putting that much pressure on entrepreneurs and setting a schedule for them? Like you have to wake up at 6, come to the co-working space or wherever the accelerator is being, is having the headquarters, you have to go through this schedule. It's entrepreneurs, right? They don't like having a tight schedule. They like being their own bosses. They don't like to, being imposed upon.
It's not that kind of pressure I'm talking about. It's a peer pressure, right? So again, Techstars program, every week you need to stand up and say what you've accomplished the past week in front of all your peers. And you don't feel very good if you haven't accomplished something significant, because most of the other startups have. And that's the kind of positive pressure that you want. And I think, and fine, I'm American, sorry, but that there's a lack of pressure on startups, a lack of sense of urgency in startups in Europe. And we had that problem as well. I don't think Hack Forward as a program put enough pressure on the startups. And I think you need it. This is a race. And some people aren't running the race fast enough.
Okay, so you agree that there has to be a structure to the program, and the startups have to go through certain things. Otherwise, if they don't feel that they're up to it, they shouldn't go to an accelerator. To being put under that pressure. Okay, so a startup goes to an accelerator, and they are being impose that structure, like you have to wake up, you have to attend the mentoring sessions, you have to do these things, you have to like pitch 10 times a day. That happens, actually. That happens a lot.
If that happens, they have to leave the program, in my opinion. That's not going to work out.
And another thing that happens is, for example, I'm an accelerator, and I want you guys to come to my accelerator, join it. It's the first time I'm doing it, and I'm going to false advertise myself. Okay, so I'm making you pay a fee. You come to my accelerator, the program sucks, like it's just a waste of time, yeah? And you come to me, and I'm like, yeah, but you know, I need sponsors, like numbers, I need like to make it all sound big and beautiful, and actually you're not getting the amount of money that I said, you know, that is the final prize. It actually like, well, anyway. What are you supposed to do in that situation? Like, are you supposed to leave the program, like boycott the program and make it known for everybody that the program actually sucks? Or what's a startup to do in that situation? I mean, I'm not going to focus only on the positives, you know, but you guys know, and you have good programs. So this is like advising people on how to avoid the not good programs, really.
I mean, the case that you're describing right now seems completely absurd to me. I mean, obviously we had startups coming through, especially the first batch when we were still learning a shitload of things. We're still learning a lot of stuff. And throughout the process, we had to have continuous conversations about what we were offering them, whether it was correct curriculum, the mentors they were meeting, but that just an ongoing conversation. And if the people running the accelerator is not open to listen to this kind of feedback, I don't know. Yeah, you need to speak up. You need to tell everyone that this is not an initiative that you believe in, I believe, right? It's, yeah, we should be there to facilitate, help them, and accelerate them. We shouldn't be there to block their road going forward.
Okay, so there's an accelerator assembly happening right now in Europe, right? Do you guys know about it? Accelerator assembly? Yeah. What do you think about it? Do you think that will help the quality of the accelerators that are in Europe right now?
I think yeah, I don't know, maybe one of you guys want to take it, but I think the accelerators currently in Europe, I think it's still really early stages. A lot of them are not really that clearly defined on what they're going to bring. Yeah, and I don't know, I think it's going to take a couple of years, and we all going to figure out where our sweet spot is and whether it's actually an investment proposition that we're suggesting, or if it's more like a social economic proposition, which probably need money from other than private investors, because they won't put their money in something that doesn't give them a return. And I think that's only time can tell.
Yeah, I have no idea what Accelerator Assembly is.
Okay, fair enough.
We are members of GAN, which is the Global Accelerator Network.
This panel is actually powered by the Accelerator Assembly.
I saw that, and I'm ashamed of myself.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, I mean, if I'm, yeah, I just saw that there. Yeah, shit. But if I take a step back, and don't take it as an excuse for having a bad program, but a program being good is as important as the startups willing to take the best out of it. I mean, you said there is a pressure, people show up at 6 o'clock, it doesn't work, you don't discipline a founder, right? But if you have this amazing network of mentors and people you can, you know, get in touch with, but if your team is just there for the money and steaming ahead in the same direction they came with, and they're not doing anything, they're not taking any advice, then it doesn't matter how good your program is. If they don't listen, they just don't listen. So there are always two sides of that kind of equation. And I think the program should be engaging and should be also encouraging the startups to participate actively. And that's where collaboration and peer pressure and, you know, all those things kick in. So when this is kind of the culture in your program, then people get into it and do it exactly like that. So they do get most of it, maximum out of it.
I think there is a lack also of more community-driven feedback and work during an accelerator. I think that you guys are focusing a lot on feedback from mentors. And I think Startup Chile, for example, did a good job with having it powered by the people that are actually going there and are part of a startup. And you know, even though they didn't really know what they were doing the first time, then I'm sure that they had a lot of things that failed, you know, they worked with the community, they worked with the startups that were part of the program, and they made it better and better and better. So I think that the power of the community that is being part of an accelerator is huge. So why aren't more accelerators using that model?
So if I understand the question correctly, you're saying that accelerators aren't drawing feedback from their own startups? Okay, so well, personally, I don't agree with that from my experience. We collected feedback very often from the startups on, how do you feel that we're providing for you in X, Y, Z different areas, in addition to from our network in general, and how are we performing. I think it's a two-way street, and you mentioned this as well. One of the things I struggle with a lot in Europe as well is that people don't speak up a lot. And oftentimes I struggle with startups that are waiting for someone to tell them something instead of the startup asking for something. And I think this is a really big issue. And so when you're talking about these potentially bad programs, if they exist, it's also the responsibility of the startup to speak up and say, I'm not getting this or I'm not getting that. And if they want to write about it, write about it. It's fine. I mean, this is an open society.
Do you have any questions? The audience, do you have any questions? Here, hold on. I'm coming.
Given that you're all from different backgrounds, you corporate accelerators, I'm part of a corporate accelerator as well, so privately funded ones, I mean, why are you doing it? I mean, in particular the privately funded ones, I mean, does running an accelerator program provide enough returns for you that it's actually worthwhile doing it? And I mean, maybe you can say something about it as well with regards to shutting down Hack Forward.
So the question exactly was if it's...
Well, does it pay off in the end? I mean, are you in it for the money or are you in it for the fun?
The fun? No, I mean, who's only in it
pain?
for the fun? Of course, we hope we can make a nice business out of it, right? But again, my previous point is that I think we're still early stage. I think we still have to wait a couple of years to really see which accelerator is gonna establish themselves continuously in Europe and maybe other countries, like a Techstar have done it throughout the world. But we hope, of course, that is a valid model. But yeah, you're right. There's so many initiatives, so at this point, I feel it's pretty hard to tell.
Same for us, actually, because we just started and we have to wait a couple more years. But what I can say so far, as we are a big corporation, that it's a very good marketing event and very, like, for example, our HR department is very much profiting of us because everybody loves us when we come from the print business, and we are now targeting very talented young people.
So if you want to make money in this business of accelerators, you have to look at the numbers. And the numbers say that you have to do a certain number of investments per year. And you can figure this all out mathematically. And I think the only guys that are going to make money out of this are the ones that are doing a lot of numbers. Now, the problem with doing a lot of numbers is then how much attention can you give to all of your startups? And this is one of the issues with Hack Forward, that we stuck to our startups and didn't let anyone go and said, we're there for you, we're going to give you maximum support, and therefore we were terribly resource constrained. So it's really partially a numbers game, and I think you have a whole bunch of accelerators that are in it to do good, to help the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and then I think you have some that hope to make money but probably never will, and then a very few that will pull it off.
Yeah, and I'll agree with David. I mean, we are kind of European Commission funded, but we are a commercial instrument, so we need to make a return on our investors. And where I see, and we are here to make money, of course, for our investors. And we do numbers. Like you can imagine writing a lot of, expensive lottery tickets, but, then some of them will win. And when you're investing like peanuts in terms of equity, you need some really big, wins to make up for all the other losses, because that's how this, thing works. So, and yeah, you're right about diluting your attention, but this is where your mentors step in, and we have really very involved mentors to our program, so they take over and they work with the startups together with us. so we can really give them the proper amount of attention. So yeah, we are there for the money of it, among other things like building a community and positioning that region on the map of entrepreneurship.
Does that answer your question? Anyone else?
Okay. I think what people really need to hear here is what does a startup need in order to get in Hack Forward, 11, Rockstart, Axel Springer. What are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-have things? Like that's
Well, you can't get into Hack Forward.
Okay, no. What did? Yeah.
But
like in the past.
I'll answer it anyway. You've got to wow, in a sense, the people who are looking at your application or watching your pitch or whatever. You have to exude a lot of passion. You have to have something innovative. You have to have a technology that changes something significantly. You have to have a global outlook. You have to have an amazing team. You have to be driven. You have to be motivated. You have to be ready to sacrifice. This is a huge mountain to climb doing a startup, and you have to show the investor or the accelerator or whoever it is that you and your team are the ones to do that. No.
Yeah, I mean, there is a saying that a team, like a project needs team, market and idea, but the idea is not important. So generally this kind of is valid for early stage accelerators like ours. So we need to see like a great superstar team that's targeting the right market for that team, and then the market is big enough. And then the idea can change, it can pivot, but generally we want to see the potential of this thing being a $100 million company in 5 years' time. So this is what it takes to make an impression.
Okay, and I think it's too general. What does it mean, an awesome team? Like, how many years of experience do they have to have experience in that specific domain? Do they have to have traction? Stuff like that?
It's a total experience between 6 and 6.5 years in that particular domain. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm kidding. No, I mean, honestly, when I say that the team has to be right, one team is good for one particular startup, right? So I'm going to give an example with a company from Serbia we love a lot. They're doing something for veterinarians. One is a hustler, one is a developer, and the other is a veterinarian, believe it or not. So they're like the perfect team to do that. They're not the perfect team to do the next Facebook, right? So it has to be the right team. It has an edge on anyone else doing that particular project. So you have to have domain expertise, right?
Actually, the next panel is about how to build the perfect team, the right team. So we are going to talk a lot more about how to get a good team and what makes a good team. So that's another good one. I think as like our time is up. Yeah, and so I think that the general conclusion, and you feel free to disagree with me, but is that if you have a good team, you apply for an accelerator, but you have to do your research. Like seriously research, what are they doing? Do they match your profile? Do the investors and the mentors that they bring in their program, match your startup's profile? Not just, that they say they do something, but look at the people who they bring at their programs, and also talk to them. And startups need to interview accelerators as well. Don't just apply for them and go to whoever accepts you. You have to be selective as well, especially if you're a very good team. And from there is just learning, pitching, learning, pitching, and investors. That's accelerators. And yeah, a lot of them are really good. And I know people that went to an accelerators like 2 or 3 years ago, and they're still going, and they admitted the fact that if they wouldn't have went to that accelerator, they probably would have broken up as a team. So, it's a very important stage in a startup. But do you really think that it's like a startup can succeed without attending one, right? An accelerator. A startup can succeed without going to an accelerator. But you should, because there's a lot of stuff to learn, and there's a lot of, it's a good network of people.
So I think in very short, I think the accelerator can speed up learning. So obviously you can succeed, but at this environment where you really have to move fast and you have to be focused,
to accelerate.
Why not get some tools to do that? And I think that's what we bring in.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. If you have more questions, like general questions, I wanted to stir a little bit of things, so I asked more uncomfortable questions, I guess. But if you want to ask more questions about accelerators, they are here until tomorrow, so please feel free. What? You're leaving? No. Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you very much.